Good evening and welcome to Enigmatic Anomalies. We're so glad that you could join us tonight. I'm your host, Terry Ling, and together we will go on this incredible journey into the unknown. Tonight's show will be one that will leave you thinking and reevaluating what you thought you knew. We will be speaking with an amazing gentleman by the name of Sergeant Clifford Stone. Some of you may be familiar with his background in UFO research and military cover-ups dating back to the 1940s, while for others this may serve as your introduction to him. Either way, you are in store for a real treat. Tonight's EA Radio episode is a special 1-hour installment, so sit back, relax, and open your minds to amazing UFO facts and revelations. We'll be right back.
For hundreds of years, those that have been curious enough to look to the stars in search of something beyond ourselves have been shunned, persecuted, and laughed at. Now, it's time for those curious few to laugh back. Saucer Seekers is a hilarious online comic strip that takes a humorous look at our world of disinformation while facing everyday life from the point of view of those who devote their lives to the search for the truth. The Saucer Seekers! TheSaucerSeekers.com.
Welcome back to Enigmatic Anomalies. EA Radio is very proud to have as its guest tonight a gentleman who has spent most of his adult life addressing the UFO topic. Sergeant Stone, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Well, welcome to Enigmatic Anomalies. We're so grateful that you were able to be with us tonight. We've got a lot of questions and a lot of space to cover, and unfortunately, in a short time. However, I'm thinking we're going to have more than one segment here because there's just so much to cover, so many questions, and we can even take some questions for the next segment on our Facebook or on EA Radio, Enigmatic Anomalies Radio, and let me just get started. I know you've got a lot of stuff going on right now, and I know that you've had extraterrestrial contact with a specific race. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I've had strange experiences ever since I was a young child, and for the most part, until about 6, I thought they were just normal. I couldn't understand why other people couldn't see my friends that I knew right from the beginning they were not imaginary. But they would always warn me, don't mention them because other people couldn't see them. Then, of course, I had an incident where I accidentally killed a little bird, and that made me feel really bad and made me feel like I'd murdered another living thing. And this one, I always saw him as a little boy. All of a sudden now I saw him how he looked, and that's the entity I call Corona. And I now knew these wasn't children. Something else was going on in my life. And I found out if I ran, I really couldn't run and hide any place. And over the course of several weeks, still seeing him as a boy, but knowing the truth now, he was trying to tell me about why there was that interaction and why it was necessary. That they get to know more about our societies by attaching themselves to one person and following that person throughout their entire life. And, of course, their lifeline is a whole lot longer than what ours are.
Yes, that's very interesting.
They don't stay with you day and night and interfere with your life. They actually let you live your life. But they monitor you. I guess that's probably the better term, in order to see how you interact with others among your own species and how you interact in life in general, based in the paradigm you live in. And I didn't really have a real problem with that until I got into the military. And the unique thing was I was medically rejected for the military. I was found to be 4F, and that was in 1967 at Fort Hays there in Columbus, Ohio. But I found out that approximately 6 months later, around July 1st, July 2nd, I had to appear at Ashland, Kentucky to be reevaluated. And at that time, I was given the opportunity, if I really wanted to go in the military, I could do it. And, of course, at that time, we had the Vietnam War going on. And I was patriotic, you know, God, country, mom's apple pie. I really wanted to go in because I felt I had a patriotic duty to serve my country. So seizing up on the opportunity, I got in. And it wouldn't be until after I got through basic, went to AIT. At AIT, I had a person that I met there that was within the intelligence community, and I got to see some things there, and it kind of scared me because I wasn't supposed to be looking at the material I was looking at. I didn't have a top secret clearance, and at the time, of course, I didn't know what the other words following top secret meant. Now I know that they were compartmentalized programs, CSI material. But I went ahead, got through basic, and got through AIT, went to my first duty station, which was there at Fort Lee, Virginia, 36 Civil Affairs Company, 96 Civil Affairs Group. And it was there that I let them know I could not type. And that was supposed to be my MOS, my military occupational specialty, as a clerk typist. But upon my arrival to the unit, I told my first sergeant, you need to know right now, I can't type. They discussed it, much more to it, but it was decided that, okay, you're going to be the unit, nuclear, biological, chemical, non-commissioned officer. You're going to take care of all of the NBC equipment and all the communications equipment. So I thought, okay, fine. So I got there in January. February, I went to school for NBC, and NBC simply stands for Nuclear, Biological, Chemical. And I'd be the NBC NCO. I went there for the 3-week program, came back to my unit, participated in some exercises, and one day there was a area meeting for all the NBC OICs, that's all officers in charge, and I drove my lieutenant to Fort Belvoir, and there was this wooden-like building with an old theater at one time. And that's where they were taking all the officers for this training. All the other drivers except me and an airman, they went ahead and went to the snack bar to get something to eat. The airman and I, we stayed there. I had lunch that I brought with me. He had a lunch. And we decided that, okay, if we went inside, we could probably find a place to sit down and eat. Anyhow, when we went in, we went upstairs to where the balcony is, and we looked down, and we could see the films they were showing these officers. And they were essentially film footage of UFOs, of crashed UFOs, of UFOs being on the ground, then along with certain various, what we today would say was extraterrestrial life forms. So we were watching these, and the airman and I both thought we were pretty good in the science fiction field. So we were trying to identify what science fiction movie they came from, and we couldn't do that. But before too awful long, we realized that there were other people up there with us, and they told us in no uncertain terms that we shouldn't be up there, we shouldn't have come in, and our life was going to change. And they literally pushed us down the stairs, got us back out through the door. Then there was this military van, panel van, no lights in it, in the back area, no windows. They pushed us back in there, shut the door, and literally we were in the dark, except for the light that would every now and then occasionally break in the seams in the door. But other than that, there was no light. They drove us to a location that was a one-level building, and we went in there, and there we were introduced to two gentlemen in civilian clothes, and they immediately started to question us as to what we had seen, why we were there. In the corner, there was a third person, but he just sat there taking notes. And to make a long story short, you got little sleep, you got no food. They'd bring you food, but you'd try to get sleep over the food. They made sure you drank water. They did not want you to get dehydrated. They made sure that you would drink water. But at the end of the third day in the evening, the airman finally just said, "I didn't see anything," and that's all I have to say. No more. I didn't see anything. I don't know what I'm doing here. I didn't see anything.
So basically, I'm sorry. So basically, your military experience with UFOs started as an accident. It was like introduction 101.
No, they wanted me in the military.
Right. So they made a place for you. Sounds like they had a plan, but you weren't really privy to that plan yet, huh?
No. I didn't know that this was all going to be coming about. But, you know, when I was medically rejected and I got the opportunity to come in the military, they knew I'd do that. You know, I always wanted to go into the Air Force, and I really thought about being a pilot. Well, when I was getting in the Army, I went ahead and they had what was called the Flight Officers Aviation Program. And you could get in to that. So I said I wouldn't go to that. Oh, no. Then, you know, they're going to give you another physical, and they're going to find the medical problems, and you'll be out. But remember, I want to go in the Air Force. They wanted me in the Air Force, which is why they didn't want me to get drafted. And that's why they didn't just draft me, even though I was 4F. So when I was afforded the opportunity, I said, well, I'll go in the Army. Fine. So I went into the Army, and it would be after this intensified debriefing that I was drilled again the next day after I was released, and they were very heavily in trying to convince me to re-enlist for 3 more years, stay in the military, and help them with UFOs. And I was reluctant to do that because I was thinking, this is getting really too crazy. But then they brought out my military records. When you enlist or re-enlist, they have what's called a DD Form 4. That's an enlistment, re-enlistment contract. That contract reflected that I had enlisted in the United States Air Force for a period of 3 years. I had read Air Force Form 114, I think it was. And now they were telling me that I could be brought up on charges for defrauding the government because I knew I had listed in the Air Force, but somehow I managed to come into the Army. And I was arguing the point, no, that's not the case. Well, now if I re-enlist to stay in 3 more years, it would be an administrative situation where they would make the changes, pin any changes on my original DD Form 4 enlistment contract. And I wouldn't have to worry about being brought up on charges. Well, being, a young kid of 18 at the time, I decided, that sounds like a deal to me. And it was pointed out, you have an interest in UFOs. At the end of the year, all this is coming out anyhow. And you'll be in a position to say, right at the end, I was involved. And that sounds pretty good to an 18-year-old. So I went ahead and I agreed to all their requests. They made it clear it wasn't demands, it was requests. And from that time on, I found out I was unofficially involved in covert operations dealing with UFOs.
Okay. Well, we've got to take a quick break, so we're going to do that real quick, and when we come back, we'll find out what else happened and then some. So please stay tuned and hear a word from our sponsor, the UFOstore.com.
4,734 UFO sightings in 2007. 854 abductions by aliens or unknown species reported by American and British citizens. Pressed information about collisions with passenger aircraft and UFOs that has been kept from the public knowledge for years. And only one trusted source on information from some of the top UFO researchers in the world. Exclusive information that cannot be found anywhere else on the planet. Trusted, connected, accurate. The UFOstore.com. Expand your personal library with fast shipping and instant downloadable information from the largest selection of UFO products on the internet by going to theufostore.com or call on the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week order line at 541-523-2630. The truth is out there, and the UFOstore.com has it.
My name is Michael DeFord, and I'm the lead investigator for the Seekers Paranormal Society. About 7 years ago, I had my first paranormal experience. Now armed with the latest in paranormal equipment, I'm setting out to find the truth. Joining me on my quest to capture evidence is my equipment tech Ramon Vivas and investigator Steve Weldon. Take a front seat into our paranormal world as we are driven into the unknown. We are Seekers Paranormal Society.
SeekersParanormal.com.
Welcome back to EA Radio, the home of the enigmatic and the anomalous. And we're here talking with Clifford Stone. And Clifford, before we left, you were talking about what was going on there with the Army. You want to continue on then?
Certainly. Like I was stating, you found yourself now being drawn in, officially, unofficially. You had a real job, Mm-hmm. You did real military things, except when there was an operation that required recovering a UFO or an event, a UFO-related event that they felt that they needed your services for. And as crazy as this might sound, they can't train people to be interfacers with UFOs. That means to have the communication. And a lot of times, they only want to talk to one person.
They being the extraterrestrials?
Yes.
Okay.
And, of course, they know the people that have been selected. So the government has to find these people in the civilian sector and try to recruit them somehow and get them either in the military or the intelligence community. And a lot of times they're brought in covertly, and the people aren't even aware this is where they're going to wind up, and this is what they're going to wind up doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was such as in my case.
I see.
But
So had you already been talking to Corona and knew that it was, in fact, Corona? And Corona, by the way, for those who don't know, is the extraterrestrial that you have your relationship with.
That's correct, all the way from childhood.
Uh-huh, okay.
But, you could work as an interfacer with other species too. Like there were several types of grays and some very human-looking entities that I was involved with.
Now, if those were, I'm sorry, if those were human type, is that to be considered a hybrid then?
No.
Okay.
And I'm going to get a lot of people very angry and upset with me.
Well, not me.
But it's got to be the truth. And I never had any contact with anything that we would call a hybrid.
Okay.
I never had any contact like that. That's not to say it doesn't happen. All I can do is say it's not been part of my experience. It's just like abductions. Everybody will say that, there's no such thing as a good abduction. But I will go so far to say that some have a purpose in being, as far as their agenda goes and their concern for us. They have rogue elements in which some abductions might take place, that they have ulterior motives. People will try to say that they are evil, they are hostile. No species is evil or hostile. But they do have rogue elements that are evil and hostile.
Sure, well, that makes perfect sense.
It's not any given species. If we had any of these rogue elements, for example, that showed up like in Independence Day to try to take us over, we would put up an admirable defense, but in the end, we would lose. However, I know for a fact that our visitors, these other societies out there, would neutralize that threat. And possibly even long before we even receive casualties, or minimize the number of casualties that we would receive as inhabitants of this planet.
That's good to know.
Because they knew that we would not be able to defend ourselves. Now, with that being said, you have a lot of greedy people out there. And unfortunately, that greed runs into government also. So when we talk about the technology, we don't look at that technology for the betterment of all humanity. We look at it for the application for military weapon systems for any future war. And we attempt back engineering. But our back engineering is limited because you cannot back engineer technology that your level of technology can't even begin to comprehend. And I always like using the example, which is antiquated. Take a modern-day car, take it back to our founding fathers in 1776. I guarantee you they are not going to replicate that car. They will be able to understand certain principles about that car, and they will be able to back engineer and replicate very crudely some aspects of that car, but they will never, ever make a working prototype. In short, when that car runs out of gasoline, they're not going to get it to work no more. If you understand what I'm trying to say.
Sure do. Mm-hmm.
I do know that they use, and they always referred to it as a form of antimatter drive, but they refer to something called negative matter. And there's supposed to be a difference between negative matter and antimatter. And they use traversable wormholes, for lack of a better term. But they can navigate these traversable wormholes. And if a person wants to go and look back a couple of months, on my Facebook page, there is something I put up there from NASA that talks about these openings, these shortcuts between the sun and the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes for a fascinating viewing.
Well, speaking of your Facebook page, if you don't mind me saying this, I've been looking at some PDF files that you have uploaded, and these are something that have to do with new releases that you're bringing, I guess, up to the forefront at this point. Would you share with us about that?
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. We can hear you.
Well, those right there actually deal with events going on in around 1980. They are not documents that's been released under the Freedom of Information Act. They are documents that I acquired over the course of time that these events was taking place. And there's a whole lot of truth about things happening at Dulce, New Mexico, Archuleta Peak. But it's got clouded because of a lot of things out there isn't true what they're saying. I'm not good at calling. I'm sorry?
Like such as? What isn't true that they're saying?
One, I don't believe that there's a base out there that's manned by both the military and the ETs.
Okay. What do you believe?
I believe that there's been something going on out there for a good period of time because the Native Americans out there talk about it. When I worked Job Corps, I had a lot of kids that was Native American, and they talked to me about some of the events that happened out there. And I went ahead and took a couple of the kids home, and I got to talk to some of the people up there. I got to visit the area, and there are strange structures out there that are indicative of something being there. But I believe back in 1980, when Paul got involved, he was too close to a recovery. And that recovery, for whatever reason, took several days in order for it to take place. But there was other things going on at the same time, and he became involved in this.
You mentioned Paul. What's Paul's last name? Okay.
But the military started to manipulate him. And I'm not finished publishing all the documents that I want to publish there. I got some more, and one of them is going to be a 24-page document that will be pretty enlightening. And it's in Paul's own words, even in his own handwriting. But
well, they do seem all to be in handwriting notes back and forth. I mean, it's hard to read, but I got my little magnifying glass out, and I was trying to read the PDFs with my readers and my magnifying glass, to see what it was that it was all about. It's pretty interesting stuff.
They're actually pictures. I have to do it one frame at a time because it won't let me download a PDF file. If you go ahead and copy that as a JPEG file, you can actually enlarge it on your computer after you copy it.
Right, okay.
And I went back and I've done that to make sure, because some people were saying, you can't read this.
Now, how would our listeners find these documents that we're speaking about?
Well, like I say, these are documents that were never supposed to see the light of day. And they're not Freedom of Information Act documents. They're documents that I acquired over the period of time that all this was going on. And I have one of two choices. Let them sit in a file and deteriorate and be lost to the world forever, or try to put them up there with saying very little, let the people read them, because they name names.
Yeah, they do.
People are real people. And you get to see who your players are. And like today, I posted one where they were talking about doing a check of the film at $3,000 per frame. Now, a lot of these people are claiming to be within the government, which that turned Paul off when he found out that wasn't the case. But at the same time, in this our 24-page document, you're going to see where Paul makes it clear that the people in the UFO field that were very much involved in this at the time were being played by people in the military, such as OSI, Air Force Intelligence, and maybe a couple of others. I would have probably have lost all interest if it wasn't for my having ground-level contact and talking to one man, a colonel, who's not a UFO buff. He's not out there selling books. He's not out there even trying to tell the story of Dulcie. But he was involved from the beginning. And he, when I wanted to talk to him, he wouldn't talk to me in his office. But he did tell me, if you call me at home, I will go ahead and I will answer your questions. So I did call him at home. I still have his home phone number. When I called, he verified everything in the first document, which is the OSI document. He verified communications between the senators' offices. And also, I talked to the senators' offices that were involved, and they were standoffish. They did not want to say too much at all. And it was almost like they were sequestered in their thought and in their words. But he also told me, I said, well, what do you think about the things that Mr. Benowitz is saying and the things he says he's investigating? He says, Sergeant, I'll tell you this. Mr. Benowitz is investigating, and these are his direct words, is investigating something not found in nature. And at that point, I decided he answered enough questions, we would terminate the call, because he was still in the military, I was still in the military. If they wanted to come and hit me up, which toward the end they tried to court-martial me, if I didn't just shut up and, have no more to say. I was given orders not to file Freedom of Information Act requests, not to talk to reporters, not to talk to people in these UFO, quote, nut, unquote, groups. Bottom line, they didn't want me to say anything or do anything, but at the same time, I knew we were hurting people. We were hurting people because we knew UFOs were real. We knew that there were several different classifications of the various species that was coming here. By 1989, I don't know, we classified at least 57. We knew there was interaction taking place with these visitors coming here. We knew that crashes occurred. Rare, very, very rare that they happened, but also a lot of time debris would be left behind, and we were interested in that too.
Well, that debris seemed to move us forward with our technology advancements, and
a lot of it has. And be very careful what you think was the leading edge of the technology versus. Let me put it to you this way: the F-117 is an aircraft that would fall like a rock if it wasn't for computers, but it isn't the best that they had. Now you go to the B-2, there's some things on there that didn't necessarily get its start right here on this planet. The other thing is memory composite. This is material that you can wad up, open your hand, and it takes back on its original shape.
Yeah, that's some pretty amazing stuff. I'd love to see that, but I guess that's...
No, it's out. It's out. We use it. We use it in the tethers that we send it to space. In 47, we didn't have it, but how ironic that in 48, the research and development programs in the military went ahead, started to develop it, and was working on it. And even some of the scientists there knew that we didn't develop this.
Mm-hmm.
This came from someplace else. Mm-hmm. One scientist went ahead and started to tell people in the UFO field, yeah, I was a scientist back in the day, and I worked on this. They thought, oh, this poor demented soul. It wasn't until a document came out in which his name was there that, hey, this guy was telling the truth. In short, we go ahead and a lot of times, and God forgive me, it's not everybody in the UFO field, okay? And it's not everybody within the UFO groups. But like using my own case, people say, oh, well, you know, Corona was just, if he was gray, we could accept your story more. Sorry, he's green. I can't make him gray. Oh, well, if you would just be willing to say that, you know, they could turn hostile any time, we could better accept your story. Well, no, can't do that, because as societies, they are not hostile. No more than Mexico is hostile. They do have the cartel, they are. No more than Chicago is hostile, but they do have the mafia. No more than Little Saigon in California is hostile, but they have the Vietnamese mafia. So you have these rogue elements.
Right. Well, hold on to some of those thoughts, because I've got some questions for you. But we do need to go to a quick break again. So please stay tuned and hear a word from our sponsor, SeekersParanormal.com.
My name is Michael DeFoy, and I'm the lead investigator for the Seekers Paranormal Society. About 7 years ago, I had my first paranormal experience. Now, armed with the latest in paranormal equipment, I'm setting out to find the truth. Joining me on my quest to capture evidence is my equipment tech Ramon Vivas and investigator Steve Weldon. Take a front seat into our paranormal world as we are driven into the unknown. We are the Seekers Paranormal Society.
SeekersParanormal.com.
Welcome back to Enigmatic Anomalies. We're in the middle of this riveting conversation with Clifford Stone, and I know you all want to hear it as bad as I do. I wanted to talk with you a bit about the three different types of grays. I heard you say that Corona's not a gray. He's actually green. And, you know, I respect the fact that you're telling the truth and that you're not trying to hype up your story and make him into what people want you to make him into. But the fact that you're bringing out the truth about who he is and how you've always seen him, that's wonderful. But you had mentioned yesterday when we were talking about three types of grays. Can you expound on that at all?
Well, yeah, there's three types of grays that they have cataloged that are of different species.
Uh-huh.
One is roughly 3.5 foot tall, large head, spindly bodies, 3 fingers, and an opposable thumb. The second type is a little taller, and he would be about the same size of Corona, maybe a little smaller, and that would be between 4.5 foot tall. Their head is still larger in proportion to what the slender bodies are that they have. Only they have 4 fingers and an opposable thumb, just like we do.
Mm-hmm.
The arms, just like type 1, is longer than what our arms are. With the type 3, I don't know how to say this about their skin, but here again, they're grayish, but it's like they have a porous skin, and it's hard to explain that porous skin. But not reptilian, but close to it, if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Right, so it's not like ours, but it's not completely reptilian-like.
Well, texture to it. They also have 3 fingers, opposable thumb.
Mm-hmm.
Their head is larger than, far more out of proportion than the size, once again, of their small frame bodies. But with their head, it kind of makes like a pear shape, more than just like the oval shape or rounded head like that.
Now, the ones that I saw were huge heads, large eyes, no nose, no mouth, very little mouth, and they definitely were tall and thin, not as tall as me, but it wasn't a short one.
Okay, you saw the one that was about 4.5 foot tall.
Yes, uh-huh.
And they have noses, but sometimes you can't see them. And when I say noses, we're talking 2 small slits.
Yeah, I was going to say it wasn't a nose, it was a slit, as was the mouth. The mouth was just a slit.
And if you notice their mouth, they don't have teeth. They got...
no teeth.
They got hard gums, but they have no teeth. From what I understand, I've never experienced it, but if they bite down on you, you can feel it.
Now, did you see these, or were these pictures, or is this what others have told you?
A couple I'd seen. I may have seen all 3 types, but I didn't really know at that time that there was any distinctive difference. It wasn't until after my exposure to the book that it even came in to, they come from different locations. The book made more sense, but I wasn't even supposed to be exposed to that book. One of the guys who was a medical technician felt I should see that book, that I had a need to see it.
What book are you talking about?
They had a book that had the listing of the 57 different species that was in there.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
The intent was so we could have, like, if we got those that were alive, they were injured, naturally we wanted to give them first aid till a medical team arrived that knew how to treat them, because how we treat wounds and injuries with first aid doesn't always apply to them. So there were standard procedures in this book. Also, the do's and don'ts of the interactions with them. So you want to be using appropriate etiquette. The book was thick, maybe something like, I'd say 3-4 inches thick, in a black binder. And the first thing you found when you went there, you had the old black and yellow top secret cover on it, but as soon as you took that off, then you had a title page there, but it also, at the top and bottom, had top secret, flash, then a pro word that identified it as SCI material. So I, never got to keep it. And it was one of those rare cases where the SCI material was permitted to be utilized in the field outside of what we call SCI facility, because SCI stands for Sensitive Compartmented Information.
Mm-hmm.
You have a specific facility that stores SCI material. You can have confidential, secret, top secret material in a locked safe in your office if it meets the specification for containing that type of material.
Well, I understand that.
You also have that nice little fixture of a thermite bomb on top, to where all you have to do is pull the pin, and everything on the inside is going to be destroyed by that bomb melting through the.
Oh boy!
Destroying everything. But they had that. They also had I think it was two types of airy doors. And I never really had any contact with those. There's one that was very, very large, which I'd like to have known more about. And it almost looked like a fox face, and it was covered with white fur. They had problems with this certain creature right up in the Sciotaville area of Portsmouth, Ohio, where I lived as a child. And that's a story that takes much, much more longer to tell than what we have time here.
Oh, no problem.
But I understand that about 10 years ago it made a reappearance.
Well, I was going to mention that I understand our firefighters today are actually trained in recovering UFO crashes. So I'm wondering if some of that information has actually come from this book that you're talking about.
This right here didn't come from the book, but I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the Firefighter's Manual.
Yes,
I want to say it's chapter 13, but I'm not sure what chapter
I think it is.
And they talk about specific things that should happen. And the person that put that in there, while he says he doesn't necessarily believe in UFOs, it was one of those situations, what if they exist? And if they do exist, that eventually something's going to happen in a major city in which the police and the fire department, your first responders, are going to have to react to and do certain things until the military gets there. And that's what he was prepping them for.
Well, what about the notion that the reptilians might be malevolent? Going back to that question, because we were talking about, some of them being good, some of them not being.
Yeah,
Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, once again, you got to remember, bottom line, if they're evil and they want to destroy us, one, what's the purpose? And I'll get back to that. Two, if you do not grow spiritually with your technology, at some point you fall victim to it. It was E.T. that actually brought it to our attention that we were a bunch of dummies in the 50s and 60s in preparing for a nuclear war, thinking there would be a winner. They were the ones that went ahead and said, you fire missiles and launch your bombers. The other side fires their missiles, launch their bombers. And you got all these countries just sitting back watching. You all are going to die. And I don't know this for a fact, but I'd even wager that it was our visitors that pointed out the concept of mutual assured destruction. If anybody gets foolish enough to start a nuclear war, the other side's going to retaliate, even if they don't retaliate. The fallout and the aftermath of any type of thermal nuclear confrontation is going to destroy life on this planet as we know it. Hence, MAD.
Well, sure, even Fukushima is causing all the trouble that it's causing, in California now. So, even the fallout.
You don't even have to go there. For the last 90 years, we have done horrible things to ourselves.
Yes.
And most of the people of the world are not aware of that. We are still having medical problems, even to this day. But we try to cover all this up. That's brought out because of open-air testing of nuclear devices. We have other medical problems that come into play because of open-air experimentation with chemical and biological weapons. But we go ahead and we realize that a certain segment of society may become seriously ill or even die as a result of it. But before they find out that any government had anything to do with it, it will be years. And who are you going to hold responsible? Like
right.
the NSA, what they're doing right now. They have been doing this for years, listening. Like right now, let me say hello to the NSA and all the other intelligence communities that may be listening to us, because they do that. We're talking about a subject that, whether they believe in UFOs or disbelieve, we bring in information that they themselves considered classified. And they're going to listen in. Congress back in the 70s, or late 60s, early 70s, told them to stop doing this. Oh, yes, we will. They continued right on. In 2004, we found out they're doing it again, and it was, yeah, but, you know, we don't want no more 9/11, which we don't. But we know who our enemies are. We know good intel. We know what to monitor. The problem I have with the NSA and the other intelligence communities is that they have no guidelines. They feel they're above the law. They don't feel that they have to monitor just the bad guys. But like you and I talking what we're talking about right now,
Mm-hmm.
we are potential bad guys. We are talking about things that, if their officially sanctioned ridicule program cannot stifle, then, you know, God help us if too many people start to listen and believe what we're saying, because then we become a threat to the insecurity of these people that want to have control. And unfortunately, that ties in with the intelligence community, not just in the United States. We're just better at it, but it ties in with the intelligence communities of all nations.
Well, just for the record, for those who are listening, I'm the proverbial peacenik. So I'm not here to do any harm. I just want the truth. And I think we're all entitled to that. You know, I really do. What do you feel is the ultimate message, or like the takeaway from Corona, or perhaps even some of the other grays that you've interacted with?
The ultimate message is this, is that they're a party to keeping this information under wraps. Nobody really knows what how the world population is going to react once they are told that we have visitors from other solar systems coming here now. We have visitors from other dimensional realities coming here now. We have nothing to fear from them because they are not hostile. But we're going to see more and more of this interaction. And there are certain things that we have to do to change ourselves. Number one, grow more spiritual. And that means having concern for your fellow man. And we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
That right there is the goal, and they can't even tell us the truth. If they start telling us the truth, then what's going to happen is that certain people are going to see them as demons and devils, something evil, and going to see, well, really they're coming here to take us over because we're on the end of their food chain. This is a very big universe, and there is nothing on this little third rock from the sun that exists that is so precious they can't get from some other locations out there in space. The only thing is they have a scientific curiosity and a scientific interest in us. They also have a fear of us because in their eyes, we are the monsters.
Yeah, we can't be trusted. We say one thing
We are
and
the
do
ones
another.
capable of murdering.
Mm-hmm.
We are the ones that are capable of doing horrible things.
Mm-hmm.
Little example. We say that ETs go ahead and abduct. Well, everyone winds up safely back in their bed for the most part when these abductions take place. Very few people know anything about human trafficking. So let me fill you in on human trafficking.
Oh, yeah. There's a
Today's
subject.
world, there are 27 million people around the world that essentially live in as essential slaves. Here in the United States alone, our best guess, because we don't know, but our best guess is that 2,000 people annually are brought across the borders to be in some type of slave environment right here in the United States. Sweat boxes, in the sex industry, things of this sort. And I use the term sex industry loosely, but that's what it's called in official channels as far as law enforcement goes. You have runaway children. 3 out of 4, and this is here in America, and also other countries, but we're talking about America too. 3 out of 4 children who run away from home who remain gone for 2 weeks will wind up in some form of white slavery or trafficking in persons. They will fall victim to that in one form or another. And then we go ahead and dare say that our visitors, who could go ahead and literally destroy the world within minutes, they're hostile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a full subject, that's for sure.
It's highly irrational. Highly irrational. But once again, I always have to say, with that being said, you have the situation where I myself have had a couple situations that wasn't like, best of friends and glad to see you type situation.
Mm-hmm.
There's a place in there where I got to see my son.
Yes.
Where they made it possible for me to see my son.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of it, there was another entity that was involved right there in the bedroom. And, of course, it took on this sinister face and literally said, "We could kill you." And that wasn't the last time that would happen, nor was it the first. Then immediately I heard this voice, real soft, "No harm shall come to this man. Sleep." And that that face that was in that circle or globe, it was like molten lava falling down and hitting the floor. But it made no mark or nothing like that. And I went back to sleep. This was in 1997. And I slept for over 18 hours. My son got killed August the 18th, 1995. And so it was 96 is when this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't sleep well. I slept sporadically, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes, I'd get up. Then I might go doze off again, but then only less than an hour. But on that particular night, after I got the visitation with my son and was able to come back, and this event that I just related to you took place, I slept for over 18 hours, and it was the best sleep I had since the death of my son.
Mm-hmm.
And it helped me find closure to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm Catholic, and all the experiences I had has not changed my religion, has not changed my faith. I believe in God, and I'll tell you this: one of the hardest things that most people in the UFO field are going to have a problem with is that they're going to find out that our visitors also believe in God. If you were to ask them, does God exist? They would tell you that which you call God exists. Now, they would stop there because they can't tell you which religion is true and correct and all this, but they would tell you also that there is universal good and there's universal evil. And we, humans, the inhabitants of planet Earth, we are good manipulators. We take what we want and consider good, mix it with things that are bad, and we mix it all together, and we say, okay, if depending on what paradigm you find yourselves in, this right here is good. Anything outside of this, it's bad. Well, to meet your needs, to meet the way you want things to be, you mix that good and bad together and you call it good. And that happens all over the world. Good example, Middle East. If a daughter or wife transgress against the family or against the husband or the men in that society, they can be put to death. It's perfectly righteous to do that. Now, the whole situation is, and I want to use this one specifically, that is a moral wrong to kill anyone.
Right.
But we go ahead and say, okay, it's morally right to do this.
Well, we don't say that. They say that.
Oh, yeah, well, we don't do that. But our visitors don't say that neither.
Mm-hmm.
They make it quite clear. You have universal good. You can't change that. You have universal evil. In our hearts and our minds, we know the difference. But we let manipulators manipulate us, and they essentially have control over us at that time, telling this is what you're to believe. Now, if you don't believe this, I'm not going to have anything to do with you, and you're going to have problems as a result of it, so you have to believe this.
Right.
From that time on, when I first learned this lesson, I started to tell other people, let no one live in your mind rent-free. And all too often, we are so willing to go ahead and let people live in our mind rent-free. If you want to believe that all ETs are bad, hey, more power to you. I know it's not the case. But if you believe that and you get enjoyment out of being like a scared child, hey, hit up on some sci-fi book club of the month.
Well, that's true for me as well. I don't believe that they are, wicked in any way. I have not had that experience myself. I've had good experiences. I've even had some healing, and I know you have. So we'll talk about that when we come back from a break. So please stay tuned, and let's hear a word from our sponsor, thesaucerseekers.com.
For hundreds of years, those that have been curious enough to look to the stars in search of something beyond ourselves have been shunned, persecuted, and laughed at. Now, it's time for those curious few to laugh back. Saucer Seekers is a hilarious online comic strip that takes a humorous look at our world of disinformation while facing everyday life from the point of view of those who devote their lives to the search for the truth. The Saucer Seekers! TheSaucerSeekers.com.
Welcome back to Enigmatic Anomalies, and we're continuing on with our conversation tonight with Clifford Stone. This is just great news tonight. Clifford, I just wanted to ask you, just before we left, we were talking about, your thinking about the extraterrestrials being good and bad. And a question that I've had that I'd like to ask you is, what are your thoughts on extraterrestrials having a hand in our creation?
Absolutely, positively not. Right from the beginning, if they created us, they would control us. And if they were controlling us, they wouldn't be so sloppy about that control by letting us have free agencies.
Mm-hmm.
They would tell you point blank, the same God that created you created us. They would also make a point telling you, at no time in your history, and back in ancient times, they were much more open than what they are now. It was when the greed of any civilization, even in the ancient times, started to come into play, where they realized that our visitors had powers that could make some of the earthly civilizations more powerful and more dominant than the others, and possibly impose their will on them, that they broke off that contact. But they would tell you that the same God that created us created them. They would also tell you that the universe, and you have to be careful because they bring in multiverse with this, because what you see isn't necessarily all that you get. They are aware of the fact that there are existing other parallel universes that exist within the same space, but at a different time, frequency, or vibration. And I'm not really good at that. And I mean, when they talk to me and try to explain it to me, they try to talk to me as you would try to explain Christmas to a child.
Right, they're multidimensional, so...
Right.
And they understand
the whole
things.
situation is there's a complexity there.
Mm-hmm.
But also, when you understand that there's no need to go ahead and make the same mistakes over and over. And I'll tell you right now, they would feel that if it was not for, and dare I say, a loving God that created living things and gave them the free agency, and I say living things because I'm not just referring to the planet Earth here,
mm-hmm.
And see some of the most horrific things that we do, and not just throw your hands up in disgust and decide, okay, beat up the dough and pound it all back up. We're going to try to make another better loaf of bread. That free agency is there. We find out things as we live life. And when I say we live life, as we grow, one of two things happens. We either grow more spiritually and we grow with our technology, or we become decadent and we die as a result of our technology.
Mm-hmm.
And they would tell you that it's a very human concept to believe that there's a possibility we could be created by some life form in space, but that beings along the lines we are, that are sentient, mortal beings performing an experiment like this, wouldn't be that sloppy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole lot more to that, bringing in the divinity of a supreme being. But you go back, like with Einstein, and he went ahead, he took 10 pennies once. He said, you take the 10 pennies, you put it in your pocket. You pull out one, and you mark them 1 to 10. You pull out one. The probability of that first penny being 1 is 1 in 10. You put it back in your pocket. You pull out another one. The probability of that second one being 2 is 1 in 100. The next one, being 3, 1 in 1,000. And it goes up to something like, I think, 100,000. But he's caution, that's 10 pennies. Now, think of that 10 pennies being 100,000 stars.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And take into consideration that from within the first 4/100ths of a second of the Big Bang, things had to come into play in order for the universe to be formed anyhow. But they had to fall right into place at the exact time for any life to appear anywhere in the universe. And we're talking from the beginning of time to where we find ourselves today. And the other interesting thing, nothing existed before the Big Bang. Well, For an explosion, there are 4 nuclear forces that have to occur. The problem is they did not come into existence until after the first 4/100,000th of a second. So what caused the explosion?
Mm-hmm.
And, what they try to point out is that as we progress scientifically, we will have a whole lot more of our questions answered in due course.
Well, I've talked to quite a few different people, and it appears that the extraterrestrials that I have spoken with, as well as friends of mine have spoken with, they all agree that there is a supreme God, and they know who he is. They acknowledge him.
When they had the MJ-12 document coming out, the Carter briefing, which actually there was a guy by the name of Rick Kirkham they were setting up to get that out through Inside Edition. Fortunately for Rick Kirkham, he came here first. So I let him know who he was really going to be meeting in California, to include the 2 intelligence people he had been meeting there, who were saying they were someone other than what they were. And here again, I'm giving you a name. Rick Kirkham. He worked as a reporter for Inside Edition. He's got a place on Facebook. Ask him if he remembers meeting with Clifford Stone and remembers the 3-part that he did on UFOs for Inside Edition.
Mm-hmm.
So he went in, and I did not give him a copy of the Carter briefing because I was not clear to do that. But I said, here's who you're going to meet. When he got there, and they found out, wait a minute, if, he said, well, I met Sergeant Stone, I know who I'm meeting here. And, no way. He says, yeah, he even showed me the Carter briefing. There's no way he cannot have that. So they told him, okay, we need to know on page 3, line 11, verbatim, what does line 11 say on page 3? He says, well, it's in my apartment. I'll go look at it, and I'll come back and tell you. He goes to a phone. He calls me, and here's proof that there's a God, because he was praying to God I'd be home. So he went ahead, and he called, and he says, I need to know verbatim, what does it say on line 11, page 3? And I told him. So he went back, and he told them. Both those agents caught the next thing. One was a captain, one was a senior non-commissioned officer in OSI. They caught the next thing coming back here to Kirtland and got out of California.
Wow.
And the whole situation is these people have messed over a lot of people in the UFO field. And like right now, I'm trying to draw the line and try to say, folks, please, please, please think for yourself and check all the facts.
Absolutely. Yeah, they have to do that.
It's not important they believe my experiences, what I went through, but the documents are real.
Mm-hmm.
There's proof in the pudding in the events of what people have seen. For example, you have had sightings of our extraterrestrial visitors.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing that, you're not alone, and that's another big message I have. It's okay for you to have seen these. Don't be afraid to talk. And some of the experiences are scary. And if you find yourself being abducted, or you're close to a visitor and you think something's about to happen, ask questions. You might be shocked at the answers you get, but you're going to get answers.
That's a very good point. Ask questions.
Absolutely. And it was, who was it? Betty Hill.
Mm-hmm.
When she was abducted, her and her husband, both of them were scared to death. She saw a book on a table, what she called a table, in the room where she was at. And she says, no, I want people to know this happened. I want proof. I want evidence. I want that book.
Mm-hmm.
One of the aliens there said, it's okay, we're not going to harm you, and you can take the book. But another one that's in much more authority says, no, she can't. We cannot let them know this is happening.
Right.
Most people forget that even happened in that incident. So here you had one ET trying to reassure her. You had another one scolding the one that was trying to reassure her, no, they cannot know any of this is going on. It makes it clear there, they were not to remember what happened. They would have that missing time, but they wasn't to remember what happened.
However, she did get the star chart, and it was in reverse, and it was a beautiful thing when we were able to actually find that.
And that was
she was an amazing woman.
The name of Marjorie Fish that went ahead came up with it from the star catalogs that didn't come out until 1969.
Right. Amazing.
And, of course, the debunkers, there are any number of combination of stars out there we could have used. Well, guess what? Why didn't these highly intelligent and evolved human beings, we call skeptics, why didn't they come up with it long before she did? All she was doing was searching for the truth.
Right.
And she stumbled upon it by sheer accident.
Mm-hmm.
And these debunkers that had egg on their face now, we could have done that. There's so many different numbers. But you know what? To say, okay, here's this one. Give me 5 other examples of where it would have come up and worked out exactly the way that one did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you right now, they're not going to be able to give you one example. Because it didn't exist then, didn't exist until 1969, and the debunkers had egg on their face, period. Bottom line, end of discussion there.
Right, and thank God that Kathleen Marden is keeping all that alive and moving forward and, doing such an excellent job, too.
The first casualty
mm-hmm.
of any scientific endeavor,
mm-hmm.
our search and quest for knowledge, the first casualty is truth,
yes.
which is sacrificed in the interest of individual groups' own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
In short, in the UFO field, there are too many agendas. And our only drive and desire within the UFO field shouldn't be who has the best bestseller out there, who has the most fans, who gets the most attaboys. But let us work together, agreeing to understand that we are going to disagree in many situations, but we're going to walk down that road together in a quest for the truth. And we're going to hold fast to those things that are true and good that will ultimately open the door to UFO reality, our ET intelligence being here, and there will come some social interaction with our society and their societies, not in fear, but in a relationship of harmony and us learning, and may God grant our spiritual growth.
Absolutely.
And I'm not talking religion here. I am talking about man's inhumanity to man, where we grow to, when we go out there amongst cosmos, if we go out looking for conquest of a world developing, but not as vastly as sophisticated technologically as we are, and we decide we're going to impose our will, they're not going to let us do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we are a world in quarantine because that is exactly who we are.
Mm-hmm.
We would do that.
Well, I know I'm trying to do my part in working together with other organizations. As you well know, I'm the Assistant State Director for Florida MUFON, and yet working with Enigmatic Anomalies to do this type of interviewing, because it's important to me that the truth be told. And yeah, go ahead.
The situation is this. Most people think, I'm crazy and I'm deluded and all, but you know what? The day I die, I'll be saying the same thing. And I believe I'll stand before God,
mm-hmm.
and I'll be held accountable. So I want to be on the righteous side of God, not saying, whoops, how do I explain this?
Right, exactly. We've got to take a quick break. I'm sorry.
Not a problem.
So we're going to take a real quick break, and stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We'll finish right up with Clifford Stone when we come back.
$4,734 UFO sightings in 2007. 854 abductions by aliens or unknown species reported by American and British citizens. Pressed information about collisions with passenger aircraft and UFOs that has been kept from the public knowledge for years. And only one trusted source of information from some of the top UFO researchers in the world. Exclusive information that cannot be found anywhere else on the planet. Trusted, connected, accurate. The UFOstore.com. Expand your personal library with fast shipping and instant downloadable information from the largest selection of UFO products on the internet by going to theufostore.com or call on the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week order line at 541-523-2630. The truth is out there, and the UFOstore.com has it.
Welcome back to Enigmatic Anomalies, and we're talking with Clifford Stone. This is our final segment of the evening, and previously I had spoken with you about a PDF, but I was wrong in that, so I would like to correct myself. These are actually photographs that you did, page by page, on your Facebook page. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I put the documents up there because I know if there's a document that I question, I'll immediately question. These documents here, you're not going to get them, as far as the Dulce documents, you're not going to get them through the Freedom of Information Act. They cover a 2 or 3 year period of time, and it brings in the players there. And there's been something going on at Dulce for a long time, and it goes on to this very day. And we're no close to answers than the Native Americans were when 50, 60 years ago. So we're still looking for answers. However, with Benowitz stumbling upon what he had stumbled up on and wanted to research it and wanted to investigate, it became dead reckoning then that the Air Force had to go ahead and attempt to debunk the story. So we call them officially sanctioned deception programs. And that was very swift. And they use people in the UFO field, as you shall find in that 24-page document, how even the intelligence agencies that was doing it to them felt about these particular people. But, I'm not doing it to go ahead, be mean, or rub people's noses in it. People need to understand, and they need to go ahead and start searching for the truth and not believing every story that's told.
Right. Because
there are those officially sanctioned deception programs. There's the greed of man. There are people who, and don't let no one tell you, there's no money to be made in this field. Yeah, if you want to do the legwork, you can make money in the UFO field. And I've seen it happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole situation is, the important thing is the truth. And just like you, God bless you, you're giving me a means to say what I really want to say, what I feel I need to say.
Mm-hmm.
You're not taking sides. It's an open forum. You're listening. You're not allowing no one to live in your mind rent-free, but you're a searcher of the truth. I want everybody who has an interest in the UFO field, everybody who's had experiences, to search for that truth and not just let people live in their mind rent-free.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want people to go ahead, Clifford Stone, he's a good guy, yes, I believe in him. No, I want them to go ahead and search for that truth. That's why I use the documents. I'm all the time told, people don't read. you're wasting your time putting the documents up there. And maybe I am, but you know what? I'm going to give it my best effort. From now till the day I die, I am going to do everything and anything in my power to get the truth out there, not just the truth as I know it, but as the truth that is reflected within the government's own documents, that today they state, oh, no, it didn't happen that way. History and UFO history as we know it, as with any other history, is a lie. The truth as it really exists has been classified and kept from most of the people. These documents come out, they set in files, and they fade away. And history as we know it eventually becomes a myth, with the truth never being known. My goal is to get a part of that history, particularly as it pertains to UFOs, out into the open public. And hopefully others will download those documents and preserve them for prosperity so that future generations can see them. In preparation for that, one day that I pray God is more in the near future than the far future, that one event is going to occur in which no government on the face of the earth can cover up, lie, or conceal that we are not alone in the universe, and we haven't been alone for a long time, and that we are in a position where we can comfortably welcome our visitors as friends and share a communion with them, not out of fear and not out of irrational fear.
Right.
But that we can go ahead and have some type of peaceable coexistence where we learn from them. And at the same time, no matter how meager it is, they learn a little from us.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. After all, that's why they're here. They're watching us. They're following us. And you know, Clifford, I agree with you 100%. And I disagree with the status quo saying that we don't read. I think we do read. I think ufologists do nothing but read to get to the truth and to find out the facts. And I'm very glad that you've taken that stand and you've made this mention. You know, there is just so much to cover, and we did go over our allotted time here, but I'm glad that we did. There's just so much to talk about, and I want to make sure that you'll come back again sometime and you'll talk with us and cover some other questions that we all have. I'd like to just take a moment and let people know about Enigmatic Anomalies and EA Radio and EA TV, enigmaticanomalies.com. I'd like to say thank you so much for being on the show with us. And for our listeners tonight, please stay tuned for future shows covering topics of ghosts and demons, as well as Bigfoot and cryptozoology. Please take a moment to follow us on Facebook or on our Facebook page, and like us if you would, please, and also Spreaker.com. And again, thank you so much, Clifford. People can respond to you if they go to your Facebook page. So that's just Clifford Stone, correct, on Facebook?
Yes, ma'am, and if I may say so, thank you, and to you and your listeners, I'd like to say God bless, and you're all in my prayers.
Thank you. God bless you, and Merry Christmas to everyone. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you again.
All right. Good night to our listeners, and we'll see you again on EA Radio. This is Terry Ling, signing off for the evening and saying good night to all of our listeners. Thanks for joining us.
Bird, and that made me feel really bad and made me feel like I'd murdered another living thing. And this one, I always saw him as a little boy. All of a sudden now I saw him how he looked, and that's the entity I call Corona. And I now knew these wasn't children, something else was going on in my life. And I found out if I ran, I really couldn't run and hide any place. And over the course of several weeks, still seeing him as a boy, but knowing the truth now, he was trying to tell me about why there was that interaction and why it was necessary. That they get to know more about our societies by attaching themselves to one person and following that person throughout their entire life. And, of course, their lifeline is a whole lot longer than what ours are.
Yes, that's very interesting.
They don't stay with you day and night and interfere with your life. They actually let you live your life. But they monitor you. I guess that's probably the better term, in order to see how you interact with others among your own species and how you interact in life in general, based in the paradigm you live in. And I didn't really have a real problem with that until I got into the military. And the unique thing was I was medically rejected for the military. I was found to be 4F, and that was in 1967 at Fort Hays there in Columbus, Ohio. But I found out that approximately 6 months later, around July 1st, July 2nd, I had to appear at Ashland, Kentucky to be reevaluated. And at that time, I was given the opportunity, if I really wanted to go in the military, I could do it. And, of course, at that time, we had the Vietnam War going on. And I was patriotic, God, country, mom's apple pie. I really wanted to go in because I felt I had a patriotic duty to serve my country. So, seizing up on the opportunity, I got in. And it wouldn't be until after I got through basic, went to AIT. At AIT, I had a person that I met there that was within the intelligence community, and I got to see some things there, and it kind of scared me because I know I wasn't supposed to be looking at the material I was looking at. I didn't have a top secret clearance. And at the time, of course, I didn't know what the other words following top secret meant. Now I know that they were compartmentalized programs, CSI material. But I went ahead, got through basic, and got through AIT, went to my first duty station, which was there at Fort Lee, Virginia, 36 Civil Affairs Company, 96 Civil Affairs Group. And it was there that I let them know I could not type. And that was supposed to be my MOS, my military occupational specialty, as a clerk typist. But
It's a hilarious online comic strip that takes a humorous look at our world of disinformation while facing everyday life from the point of view of those who devote their lives to the search for the truth. The Saucer Seekers! TheSaucerSeekers.com.
Welcome back to Enigmatic Anomalies. EA Radio is very proud to have as its guest tonight a gentleman who has spent most of his adult life addressing the UFO topic. Sergeant Stone, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Well, welcome to Enigmatic Anomalies. We're so grateful that you were able to be with us tonight. We've got a lot of questions and a lot of space to cover, and unfortunately, in a short time. However, I'm thinking we're going to have more than one segment here because there's just so much to cover, so many questions, and we can even take some questions for the next segment on our Facebook or on EA Radio, Enigmatic Anomalies Radio, and let me just get started. I know you've got a lot of stuff going on right now. And I know that you've had extraterrestrial contact with a specific race. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I have had strange experiences ever since I was a young child, and for the most part, until about the 6, I thought they were just normal. I couldn't understand why other people couldn't see my friends that I knew right from the beginning they were not imaginary. But they would always warn me, don't mention them because other people couldn't see them. Then, of course, I had an incident where I accidentally killed a little, on my arrival to the unit, I told my first sergeant, you need to know right now, I can't type. They discussed it, much more to it, but it was decided that, okay, you're going to be the unit, nuclear, biological, chemical, non-commissioned officer. You're going to take care of all of the NBC equipment and all the communications equipment. So I thought, okay, fine. So I got there in January. February, I went to school for NBC, and NBC simply stands for Nuclear, Biological, Chemical. And I'd be the NBC NCO. I went there for the 3-week program, came back to my unit, participated in some exercises, and one day there was a area meeting for all the NBC OICs, that's all officers in charge, and I drove my lieutenant to Fort Belvoir, and there was this wooden-like building with an old theater at one time. And that's where they were taking all the officers for this training. All the other drivers except me and an airman, they went ahead and went to the snack bar to get something to eat. The airman and I, we stayed there. I had lunch that I brought with me. He had a lunch. And we decided that, okay, if we went inside, we could probably find a place to sit down and eat. Anyhow, when we went in, we went upstairs to where the balcony is. And
Good evening and welcome to Enigmatic Anomalies. We're so glad that you could join us tonight. I'm your host, Terry Ling, and together we will go on this incredible journey into the unknown. Tonight's show will be one that will leave you thinking and reevaluating what you thought you knew. We will be speaking with an amazing gentleman by the name of Sergeant Clifford Stone. Some of you may be familiar with his background in UFO research and military cover-ups dating back to the 1940s, while for others this may serve as your introduction to him. Either way, you are in store for a real treat. Tonight's EA Radio episode is a special 1-hour installment, so sit back, relax, and open your minds to amazing UFO facts and revelations. We'll be right back.
For hundreds of years, those that have been curious enough to look to the stars in search of something beyond ourselves have been shunned, persecuted, and laughed at. Now, it's time for those curious few to laugh back. Saucer Seekers is